So my name is Hallie Rasmussen, and I work on the Upper Mississippi River National Wildlife and Fish Refuge, and I'm the Visitor Services Manager. The Upper Mississippi River National Wildlife and Fish Refuge runs 261 miles of the river. So it starts kind of up near Wabasha, Minnesota, and goes all the way down to Rock Island, Illinois. And along the way, it's not one contiguous piece of land, but along that stretch of river, there's National Wildlife Refuge. So this is a beautiful place for all kinds of wildlife, including the bald eagle, which is what we're going to talk about today. The bald eagle population, as most people know, got down pretty low because of DDT, which basically what happened is the DDT ingestion by eagles made their eggs too brittle to be able to hatch babies. So once that was learned through a study and the removal of DDT, then we saw a remarkable comeback of the bald eagle. The other reason that this place is so special is because bald eagles like to nest along the river. That's where the big food source is for them. So we were down to, I think, maybe one nesting pair on the river, but we were down to just a few nesting pairs nationwide, and now we have over 160 nesting pairs just on Pool 9 of the river, which is this area in Prairie du Chien, and there's probably close to over 400 nesting pairs on the National Wildlife Refuge. It's really neat because as everyone knows, the bald eagle is so majestic, and people love to see bald eagles. It represents, it's a symbol of our country. So it's a great coming back story, and they're just a really cool bird to see and to watch. They're just very majestic. They almost look prehistoric in a way. So they're really a fun bird to watch, and it draws a lot of people to this area. We have visitors that come from all over to see bald eagles in this area. So, in the wintertime, you can see them kind of perched on the ice. They're fishing in maybe open holes and things like that. And then when they, we have resident pairs that will stick around. But then when they start migrating back through, usually late February, early March timeframe, that's when you can really see numbers of them. So if you want to see a lot of bald eagles in a concentrated area, that's the time that you'd want to make a trip to see them. That's a really good question. I think we probably have maybe about 10 to 15% that stick around that are resident birds. I think a good majority of them do migrate, but then when they're nesting, there's a lot more that are here. So when I say a resident bald eagle, what I mean by that is they don't migrate. They stick around for the winter time. All of the birds that are nesting, a good majority of them do migrate, but we do have some that will stick around through the whole winter. But that's why it's such a really good time to see them concentrated, is because then, as winter's kind of coming to an end, well, maybe not so much for us, but for them in, early March, that's when they'll start migrating through this area. And they're really, really fun to see because they really group up, and there'll be large numbers of them in various locations along the river. So bald eagles don't get their white head until they're about 5 years old. So juvenile bald eagles will be pretty dark in color, and they have, they'll start getting, like, every year they'll get a little bit more coloring to them that's closer to their adult stage. But if you see a darker looking eagle, chances are it's going to be a juvenile bald eagle. And one of the ways you can tell the difference between, the golden eagle and a juvenile bald eagle is that bald eagles mostly hunt around water and things like that. So they have, their feathers don't come all the way to their feet. And on the Goldens, their feathers, I call them like boots with the fur. They have their feathers go all the way down to their feet because they hunt mostly terrestrial animals and mammals and things like that. So they are adapted to be able to dry quicker. So that's one way that you can tell, although you have to get a pretty good look and close look at them to be able to see that. So, but I would say 90% of the time, if you're seeing a darker colored eagle, it's probably a bald eagle in this area. We have a few Goldens, but not a lot. I think one of the biggest things to know, especially, I mean, when bald eagles are nesting, that's the most important time because they can't be off those eggs for too long while they're incubating before they're too cold and they're not going to hatch. So I would say that's the most important time to be avoiding bald eagles and disturbing them. Obviously, anytime that you get too close to wildlife and they're not comfortable with it, you're going to disturb them. So if they're sitting on the ice and they're resting and they're feeding, then we ask that you watch from a distance and enjoy your wildlife observation and photography from a distance. So yeah, definitely want to make sure that you're being respectful of that majestic creature and enjoying them from a distance. So you can find more information about the refuge if you go. We have a Facebook page, so you can go onto Facebook and look up the Upper Mississippi River National Wildlife and Fish Refuge. We also have a website, and I always tell people the easiest way to find us on the web is if you just Google Upper Miss Refuge, because our web address is pretty long. So, and if you go on there, you can find all about the Prairie du Chien area, but also the entire refuge, the whole 261 miles.